Saka, Timber, Maduke, Odegaard. 4 names, 4 question marks. One game on Sunday that could decide where this title race actually goes. And when Arteta stood in front of the cameras after the Sporting game and was asked about his players, you know what he said? I don't know. That's it. The manager of a team 6 points off first place, with a game at the Etihad in less than 72 hours, looked at the press and said he doesn't know. Now I want you to sit with that for a second, because it's not just an injury update, it's a window into how fragile this whole thing actually is right now. We've been building toward this moment all season. We've stayed in the race, we've ground out results, we've believed. And now, right here, at the exact moment it matters most, the squad is cracking at the seams. And I don't think people are being honest enough about how serious this is. That's what we're getting into today. No headlines, no injury lists. We're going deep on what this actually means for Sunday and what it could mean beyond it. I'm Amelia, by the way. This is where we talk about Arsenal like we actually care, because we do. If you're new here, subscribe. And I want to know right now, are you confident about Sunday? Drop it in the comments. Confident or dreading it? Let's see where we're at as a fan base. Right, let's go. So the first thing I want to talk about, and this is the one that genuinely keeps me up at night, is Saka. Not just the injury itself, the situation around it. Because here's the thing, Arteta didn't say Saka is out. He didn't say Saka is in. He said, maybe one of them, referring to Saka and Timber together. Let's see. That is not the language of a manager with a plan. That is the language of a manager hoping. And hope is not a game plan for the Etihad. Let's actually think about what Saka's absence does, or a half-fit Saka, what it does to how Arsenal play. Because this isn't just about one position, it's about everything. Saka is not simply a right winger who scores goals and makes assists. He is the player Arsenal's entire attacking structure rotates around. When he has the ball on the right and drives inside, he drags 2 or 3 players with him. That movement creates the space that Havertz runs into. It's the reason Trossard can ghost in from the left. It's why the number 8 can arrive late into the box. Take him out, or put him out there at 70%, and that whole chain collapses. Think about what Guardiola's City does when they press. They are organized, aggressive, and they target uncertainty. If Saka is on the pitch, but not moving at full sharpness, City will find that out within 15 minutes. They'll press his side harder. They'll force him into decisions earlier. And a player coming back from an Achilles issue who isn't fully sharp, under that kind of pressure, is not the same player we're used to seeing. And this is what worries me more than the injury itself, the Achilles. Arteta confirmed it himself. It was something Saka had been carrying for a while. That phrase tells you everything. This wasn't a clean tackle or a twist in training. This is a chronic issue that was building underneath the surface while Saka kept playing through it. That changes the calculus completely, because now we're not just asking, is he fit enough to start? We're asking, is it safe to play him at all? And those are very different questions. Best case, Saka comes back. He's managed carefully, 45 minutes. He impacts the game and stays on the right side of the line. That's the dream. Realistic case, he's named in the squad, starts on the bench, comes on in the second half when Arsenal needs something. The crowd goes up. He has a moment. But he's not the dominant force we need him to be. Worst case, and I hate even saying this, he starts because the situation demands it. Something flares up. And we don't just lose Sunday, we lose Saka for weeks. Right before the Champions League semi-final against Atletico, that worst-case scenario is not dramatic, it is entirely plausible. And I don't think enough people are taking that seriously. I've seen this before, not just with Arsenal. This is a pattern in elite football. A player carries an issue. The team needs him. The manager takes a calculated risk. Sometimes it works. Sometimes you end up watching that player limp off in the 63rd minute, and you just know it got worse. And the thing about Achilles problems specifically, they are not like hamstring strains where you can kind of manage the load and see how it goes. The Achilles is load-bearing. It is under pressure with every single sprint, every directional change. If it isn't right, the body compensates. And compensation on a football pitch at full pace creates new injuries. So the Saka situation is not just about Sunday. It is a risk calculation that extends all the way to Budapest if Arsenal make that final. That is the weight Arteta is carrying right now. And honestly, I don't envy him. But here's where it gets really uncomfortable. Because even if we set Saka aside, even if we accept that decision will be made carefully, the Madueke situation hits completely differently. Because Madueke's injury isn't about a player we rely on week in, week out. It's about what he represented, and that's actually more damaging than it first looks. Let me explain. When Arsenal signed Madueke in January, this was the idea: depth, genuine quality depth for exactly this kind of run-in. Someone who could come in on that right side, keep Saka fresh, provide a different profile when needed. The signing made sense because Arsenal's biggest problem in high-pressure periods has historically been that they don't rotate enough on the wings because there isn't enough quality to rotate with. Madueke was the answer to that problem. And now, 3 days before the biggest league game of the season, he hobbles off against Sporting with a knee injury, and Arteta genuinely doesn't know what it is. Think about what that means in real terms. It means Arteta cannot call on him Sunday. It almost certainly means, depending on how serious the knee is, that he misses multiple fixtures during the most critical stretch of the campaign. And it means that the problem Madueke was signed to solve is back, fully back. So who covers the right? That's a real question, not a rhetorical one. Who actually lines up on that right side if Saka either doesn't start or isn't fully fit? Reece Nelson has been in and out of the squad. Martinelli could shift across, but that weakens the left. Arteta could go to a different shape altogether. Maybe something more compact, more functional. Try to make the game tight rather than open. But here's the deeper issue. It's not just about who fills the position. It's about what that player can do in that position against City. City under Guardiola, even this season's version, is still one of the most intelligent and organized in world football. They don't just press randomly, they press to force errors. They press to cut passing lanes. They press to isolate individual players and force them backward or sideways. And the way Arsenal survive that press is through calm, quick decision-making through the middle. If Arsenal line up with a player on the right who isn't their natural option, who doesn't have the same automatisms with the fullback behind them, who doesn't have the same understanding with Havertz ahead of them, City will find it. They always find it. And this is where the Madueke injury becomes about more than personnel. It becomes about Arsenal's identity in the final third. Because right now, with Saka uncertain and Madueke injured, Arsenal's right side, which has been the most dynamic part of their attack all season, is effectively dismantled. And if Arteta tries to compensate by shifting things around, he risks losing the structure and balance that has made them hard to play against. I watched that Sporting game carefully, and even with the result, which was fine, job done, semi-final secured, there were moments in that second half where Arsenal looked heavy, fatigued, like a team running on discipline rather than energy. The Madueke injury happened in that context, and I keep thinking, if it happened in a game where the stakes were already managed and the tempo was relatively low, what does that tell us about where the squad is physically right now? It tells me they are not in peak condition. They are grinding, and grinding into the Etihad. Missing your plan B before you've even left the dressing room is not a position anyone wanted to be in. Now think about this, because it's not just the attack where things are fragile. The Odegaard situation might actually be the most important conversation we're not having loudly enough. And I say that because of one specific thing: his program notes. He didn't speak to the press. He communicated through his notes in the matchday program. And in those notes, he said, "I caught it a little bit against Sporting, but hopefully it shouldn't be too bad." Hopefully it shouldn't be too bad. That is a man who is not sure. That is a man writing something for the fans while simultaneously telling you, between the lines, that he is worried about his own body. And I want to be really clear about what Odegaard means to how Arsenal actually function. Because I think sometimes we reduce him to goals and assists and we miss the bigger picture. Odegaard is the tempo controller. He is the player who decides when Arsenal speed up and when they slow down. He is the one who breaks lines with a single touch, who finds pockets between the midfield and defense that nobody else finds, who keeps the ball moving in a way that prevents the opposition from settling into their shape. Without him fully fit, Arsenal do not just lose a creative player. They lose the control mechanism of the entire team. Now put that in the context of playing City at the Etihad. City's press, even now, even with the squad changes over recent years, is still one of the most intelligent and organised in world football. They don't just press randomly. They press to force errors. They press to cut passing lanes. They press to isolate individual players and force them backward or sideways. And the way Arsenal survive that press is through calm, quick decision-making through the middle. Odegaard is the heart of that. He's the player who takes the ball under pressure, plays the early release, finds the angle that relieves the squeeze. If he's at 60 or 70%, if he's slightly hesitant because his knee isn't fully right, that decision-making slows down by fractions. But fractions matter at this level. A half second of hesitation against City's press means you lose the ball in a dangerous area. It means City transition. It means Haaland or whoever is ahead of the ball is suddenly in behind. It means Arsenal are defending rather than playing. And here's the thing about Odegaard's situation that I think gets overlooked. He's choosing to play through this. Arteta isn't forcing him. He's forcing himself. He wrote in those notes that he is desperate to be back. That word, desperate, tells you exactly the kind of player he is. But desperation and fitness are not the same thing. And sometimes the most dangerous player in a squad is the one who wants it so badly that they don't listen to their own body. I think back to the second half of last season. We had moments where players were clearly not fully fit, but they played because the situation demanded it. And in some of those games, big games, games where margins were thin, we looked like a team carrying passengers. Not because those players weren't trying, but because trying at 70% in a Premier League title race isn't enough. The concern with Odegaard isn't whether he plays. He'll play. I'm almost certain of it. The concern is whether we, as a fan base, as a coaching staff, are being honest about the difference between Odegaard at 100% and Odegaard at 75% in a game of this magnitude, because those are different players. And that difference might be the difference between the 3 points and nothing. This is the part nobody wants to say out loud. Arsenal are not walking into the Etihad this Sunday as title contenders in full control of their destiny. They are walking in as a team that is holding itself together with belief and collective will, which matters, which is real, but which is missing some of its most important pieces at the worst possible time. And I want to connect this to the bigger picture, because I think that's where this conversation needs to land. It's not just Sunday. Sunday is the immediate crisis. But let's say Arsenal get through it. Let's say they grind out a draw, or, and I still believe this is possible, they find a way to win. What comes after? Atletico Madrid, Champions League semi-final. Atletico are one of the most physically and psychologically brutal teams in Europe to play against. Diego Simeone builds teams specifically to punish fatigue, to exploit hesitation, to make games ugly and hard and grinding. They are not a team you want to face with players who are already carrying knocks, already running on empty, already dealing with the aftermath of a squad crisis during a league run-in. So every decision Arteta makes on Sunday, whether to risk Saka, whether to start Odegaard, how to manage the minutes, those decisions don't just affect 3 points in the Premier League. They affect whether Arsenal arrive at the semi-final with anything left. And if Arsenal are serious about this Champions League campaign, and they should be, because they are one of 4 teams left, and that is not an accident, that is quality, then the management of this squad over the next 10 to 14 days is as important as any single result. That's the conversation I want Arteta to be having. Not just, can we get through Sunday, but what do we need to look like in 10 days? So where does that leave us? Here's my honest take. I think Arsenal can get something on Sunday. I believe in this group. I believe in the collective character this squad has built. And I think City, while still dangerous, are not the unstoppable machine they were 2 or 3 years ago. But I'm not pretending the injury situation isn't serious. It is. It is the worst possible timing, and it is multiple layers deep. And anyone who is telling you it doesn't matter, or that Arsenal have enough depth to cover it, I'd push back on that hard. The question isn't whether Arsenal have enough players. They have players. The question is whether the players they have, in the condition they're in, are enough for the specific demands of the Etihad on a Sunday afternoon when the title race is on the line. And I genuinely don't know the answer to that. And I think that uncertainty, that honest uncertainty, is the most real thing I can offer you right now. What I do know is this: the next 2 weeks will define this Arsenal generation more than almost any period before it. Because it's one thing to be in the race. It's another thing entirely to win. When you're cracked, when you're tired, when your best players are wrapped in cotton wool, and you're running on collective belief. The great teams find a way. That's what separates them. Sunday, we find out which one Arsenal are. One question before you go. If you're Arteta on Saturday night, what do you do? Do you risk Saka and give yourself the best chance of winning? Or do you protect him and go into the Etihad knowing you're already at a disadvantage? Tell me below. I want every single take. And if you want the full tactical breakdown of how Arsenal can actually line up and win this without their strongest 11, that video is already on its way. Subscribe so you don't miss it. See you Sunday.